September 1, 1943, somewhere over the Solomon Islands. The Pacific sky is a cruel, blinding blue. Beneath it, the ocean burns with sunlight, broken only by the grey wake of American carriers cutting through the water like steel beasts. From the deck of the USS Yorktown, CV-10, Ensign George Jack Cross lowers his goggles and exhales. His fingers tighten on the throttle of the new beast beneath him, the Grumman F6F Hellcat. Its radial engine growls like an angry god. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp coughing black smoke before roaring to life. Yorktown to Wildcat leader, you're cleared for takeoff. Good hunting, boys. Jack smirks beneath his oxygen mask. It's Hellcat leader now, sir. The signal officer drops his arm, and Jack slams the throttle forward. The plane surges down the deck, tail lifting, wind screaming, before leaping into the sky. Today will be its baptism of fire. At 10.000 feet, the formation levels out. 6 blue-gray Hellcats slice through the air, sunlight gleaming off their freshly painted wings marked with white stars. The radio crackles. Bandits, 11 o'clock high, looks like zeros. The words hang in the cockpit like a spark in a fuel tank. Off the nose, a swarm of Mitsubishi A6M0s dives from the sun, white fuselages flashing like knives. The same aircraft that had humiliated America's best just 2 years earlier at Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, and the Philippines. Jack's pulse quickens. He remembers the stories, US pilots who called the Zero unbeatable. But today, something feels different. The Hellcat doesn't flinch under pressure. Its massive frame is solid. Its engine deep and confident. Its guns, 6.50 caliber Brownings, ready to roar. Let's show 'em what this cat can do. The two formations close the distance fast, 400 miles per hour of converging fury. The first burst of traces flashes by Jack's canopy, white hot lines across the blue. He rolls hard right, the Hellcat following like a loyal predator, smooth, responsive, nothing like the fragile Wildcats or Buffaloes of old. He swings in behind a Zero trying to climb, the Japanese pilot's mistake. The Hellcat's power surges as Jack climbs with him, closing the gap easily. A squeeze on the trigger. 6 Brownings erupt in thunder. The Zero explodes in a puff of smoke and flame, debris spiraling toward the sea. Jack doesn't cheer, he banks and climbs again, scanning for the next one. Below, the battle rages, a storm of twisting contrails and bursts of fire. But the Americans are holding their own, even dominating. By noon, the fight is over. 21 Zeros down. 2 Hellcats lost. When the formation returns to Yorktown, the deck crews cheer as the blue aircraft land one by one. Mechanics rush forward, staring at the bullet holes that barely scratched the thick armor plating. Jack climbs down, heart still pounding. The flight deck smells of oil, salt, and victory. Never seen anything like it. A mechanic mutters, those Japs didn't stand a chance. The myth of Japanese aerial invincibility has met its match, in steel, fire, and American engineering. Bethpage, Long Island, June 1942. The air in Grumman's Plant No. 3 buzzes with tension. Engineers huddle over blueprints scattered across metal tables, their pencils snapping as deadlines loom. The walls tremble with the echo of hammering and riveting, America's war machine in full swing. Outside, the smell of fuel and hot steel mixes with the salty Atlantic wind. Rows of aircraft line the tarmac, F4F Wildcats, scarred veterans of Midway and Coral Sea. But inside, something new is being born. Gentlemen, Leroy Grumman says, his voice steady and low, the Navy's losing too many boys out there. The Zero outclimbs us, outturns us, and outruns us. We're done patching up the Wildcat, we need something meaner. He points to the blueprint pinned on the wall, labeled F6F1 Hellcat. This, he continues, will own the Pacific. Around him stand some of the sharpest engineering minds of the era, Bill Schwendler, Jake Swerble, and a small army of draftsmen and test pilots. Their challenge, design an aircraft that could meet the Zero head-on and win. They knew what they were up against. The Mitsubishi A6M0 had terrorized Allied pilots since 1940, a lightweight, nimble fighter that could turn inside any opponent and climb like a rocket. But its strength was also its weakness, speed and agility at the cost of protection. One bullet to its fuel tanks could ignite it like paper. Grumman's solution was pure American pragmatism, build toughness into speed. The F6F's fuselage would be larger. Its engine, a 2.000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, twice as powerful as the Zero's Nakajima Sakai. Its wings were thicker, its landing gear reinforced for carrier punishment. its cockpit armored. In testing, the prototype blew expectations away. Test pilot Bob Hall landed after his first flight, still shaking from the raw power. "She flies like she's angry," he said, grinning through his goggles. "But by God, she flies." Grumman engineers refined every inch, new folding wings for carrier storage. 6 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, bulletproof glass, self-sealing fuel tanks. And most importantly, they listened to the men who'd been to hell and back, the carrier pilots. They asked for visibility, durability, and raw climb rate. The Hellcat delivered all three. By mid-1943, the first squadrons were shipping out to the Pacific. One officer on the USS Essex watched them roll onto the flight deck and muttered, "Looks like a wildcat that ate another wildcat." They were right, the Hellcat was bigger, meaner, and ready to fight. Truck Lagoon, Caroline Islands, November 1943. The Japanese call it the Gibraltar of the Pacific, a fortress base bristling with aircraft, fuel depots, and anti-aircraft guns. At dawn, the U.S. Navy launches its strike. Hundreds of carrier-based aircraft rise from the decks, Avengers, Dauntlesses, and Hellcats leading the charge. Among them, Lieutenant William "Billy" Harris adjusts his gun sight and smiles. "Let's see what this new bird can really do." Over truck, the sky turns into chaos. Dozens of Zeros scramble to intercept. They climb fast, but not fast enough. Harris rolls into a dive, engine screaming at full throttle. The Hellcat speed pins him to his seat, but he keeps the reticle steady. He squeezes the trigger, traces tear through the air. A Zero bursts into flames, spiraling down into the lagoon below. "Splash one," he says calmly into the radio. All around, the same pattern unfolds. Hellcats diving, firing, pulling away with barely a scratch. Their armor shrugs off 7.7mm bullets that would have shredded earlier aircraft. By noon, the Americans own the skies. When the carriers recover their aircraft that evening, the tally is staggering: 50 Japanese planes destroyed for the loss of just 2 Hellcats. The legend begins. June 19, 1944, the Philippine Sea. Dawn breaks over the endless blue, and the horizon is lined with American might. 15 carriers of Task Force 58 steam westward, launching wave after wave of aircraft. The sky hums with engines, Grumman Hellcats, Douglas Dauntlesses, and Grumman Avengers climbing into formation like a mechanical swarm. Below decks, pilots huddle in briefing rooms, sweat shining on their foreheads under red lights. Charts are pinned to bulkheads. Cigarettes burn low as officers speak over the low hum of generators. "Gentlemen," the flight leader says, tapping his pointer against the map. "The Japanese mobile fleet is out there, 4 carriers. Hundreds of aircraft. They'll come to us. When they do, we hold the line." He looks around the room, meeting every eye. "Remember, they're flying Zeros and Judies. You're flying Hellcats. You've got the advantage. Use it." A murmur ripples through the pilots. Confidence. Hard-earned and quiet. For months, the F6F Hellcat had rewritten the air war in the Pacific. From the Gilberts to the Marshalls, it had swept the skies clean, destroying Japanese air power wherever it appeared. Now, over the Marianas, it would face its greatest test. At 10 a.m., radar operators aboard the USS Lexington pick up a massive incoming formation, over 300 enemy aircraft inbound from the west. The call goes out, enemy raid, bearing 320 degrees. Distance, 90 miles. A klaxon sounds through the carrier. Pilots sprint to their planes. Deck crews scramble, propellers blow to life. Lieutenant J.G. Alex Vrachu straps in and adjusts his oxygen mask. The noise around him fades, it's just him, the engine, and the weight of the sky. "Launch Hellcats." The deck officer signals, and the first fighter hurtles down the deck. One after another, they rise into the air, silver streaks against a sun-bleached sky. The first wave climbs to intercept altitude. The Japanese force, bombers and fighters from the carriers Taiho, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, approaches in rigid formation. Many of the pilots are barely trained, boys rushed into service after years of attrition. The Americans, by contrast, are veterans, calm, disciplined, and flying a machine built for dominance. From his cockpit, Vrachu spots the enemy, dark dots growing larger by the second. He flips on his gun camera. Here they come. The battle explodes. Hellcats dive from altitude, tearing through the Japanese formation with devastating efficiency. The air is filled with tracer fire, smoke trails, and the black blossoms of flak. Vrachu lines up on a Judy dive bomber. A burst of .50 caliber rounds rips through its wing. It disintegrates midair. He rolls, catches another, fires again. In just 8 minutes, he shoots down 6 aircraft. 6 kills, in a single mission. All across the sky, the same scene repeats. The Hellcat slashed through the enemy like blades. By noon, the Japanese have lost more than 250 aircraft. The Americans, just 29. The radio chatter is almost disbelieving. Christ, it's like shooting turkeys, one pilot laughs. The phrase spreads like wildfire through the fleet, the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Below, Japanese carrier decks are littered with wreckage. The once proud Taiho is struck by a torpedo and later destroyed by her own exploding fuel vapors. Pilots who do return bring horror in their eyes, they have never faced anything like the Hellcat. The Japanese commander, Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, stares across the sea from his flag bridge. His air wings are annihilated. He whispers to his staff, "Our carriers still float, but we have no airmen left to fly." When Task Force 58 recovers its aircraft that night, the kill reports are staggering: 315 enemy planes destroyed in one day. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz writes simply in his log, "The enemy's air power has been broken." And with it, the myth of Japanese air superiority dies forever. The Hellcat had done what no other aircraft could, seized the skies. And kept them. October 1944, Clark Airfield, Luzon, Philippines. The afternoon sun bakes the tarmac. The smell of gasoline and scorched rubber hangs thick in the air. A squadron of Grumman F6F Hellcats sits in a neat line. Engines ticking down after another sortie. Their paint is chipped and bullet-scarred. But the blue cats still gleam with menace. Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell, known across the fleet as Minzy 1, removes his flight helmet. Slick with sweat, his crew rushes forward, grinning from ear to ear. 12, sir, one of them asks. McCampbell nods wearily. 12. 12 kills in a single mission, a record unmatched by any Navy pilot. He'd taken off that morning with just one wingman to meet a wave of nearly 60 Japanese aircraft. When it was over, 50 had fallen, and McCampbell's guns were nearly empty. He leans against the wing of his Hellcat and stares across the field. The enemy's numbers keep coming, but their skill, their confidence, their very spirit, is gone. What was once a duel between equals has become an execution. The engineering edge. The Hellcat wasn't just another fighter, it was forgiving. A plane that turned rookies into killers and veterans into legends. Its massive double Wasp engine, 2.000 horsepower of thunder, gave it a climb rate unmatched by any Japanese design. The thick, wide wings produced lift even under damage, and the landing gear could withstand brutal carrier landings that would have crumpled a Zero. Flight instructors called it the pilot's plane. "You can take a hit, take a wave, and still bring her home," said one carrier ace. "Try that in a Zero, and you're a cloud of fire." The cockpit armor, 200 pounds of protection, saved countless lives. Behind the pilot, self-sealing fuel tanks kept the plane flying even when riddled with bullets. Every inch of the Hellcat screamed practicality. It didn't dance like the Zero, it hunted. The fall of the Zero. By late 1944, the Mitsubishi A6M0, once the terror of the Pacific, was obsolete. It had been designed for a world where maneuverability reigned supreme, where dogfights were elegant duels of agility. But by 1944, the air war had changed. Speed, climb rate, and firepower ruled the skies. Armor and survivability mattered more than grace. The Zero's paper-thin skin and unprotected fuel tanks turned it into a death trap. Worse still, Japan's elite pilots, the veterans of Pearl Harbor and the early Pacific campaigns, were gone. Replaced by barely trained replacements sent into combat with just a few dozen hours of flight time. Many of these young men faced their first battle, and their deaths, against American pilots who had hundreds of hours and a machine that practically flew itself. The results were devastating. In the second half of 1944 alone, Hellcats destroyed over 2.000 Japanese aircraft. By war's end, the F6F's kill ratio stood at 19-1, the highest of any American fighter in history. Carrier kings. From the USS Enterprise to the USS Essex, the Hellcat became the backbone of the U.S. Navy's air wings. In the battles for the Marianas, the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, they ruled the skies. Hellcats swept ahead of bombing raids, shredded kamikaze formations, and strafed airfields with impunity. Each victory tightened the noose around Japan's shrinking empire. February 19, 1945, over Iwo Jima. Lieutenant Jack Cross, now a veteran of 3 campaigns, banks his Hellcat over Mount Suribachi. Below him, the island burns. The beachheads are choked with smoke and fire. Hellcat 1 to all elements, sweep the north end. Let's clean it up. His squadron dives low, guns blazing. Japanese trucks, gun pits, and aircraft wrecks vanish under a hail of .50 caliber fire. Targets destroyed, his wingman reports. Jack pulls up, sweat beading on his brow. He glances at the ocean beyond, the endless blue that had once belonged to the rising sun. Now, it belongs to the Hellcat. A letter home. That night aboard the USS Yorktown, he sits in his bunk, writing under the dim red light of a lantern. Mum, remember when you ask what it feels like up there? It's quiet, mostly, until it isn't. The zeros still come, but they don't last long. You can see the fire trail when they go down. The men say this plane's a miracle, maybe it is. But every time I climb in, I remember the ones who flew before we had her, the ones who didn't come back. This bird doesn't just fly, it avenges them. He folds the paper and slips it into his jacket pocket. Outside, the sea whispers under the hull. The Hellcat has done more than win battles, it has rewritten the balance of power in the Pacific. And Japan's empire, once spread across half the ocean, is now burning at the edges. April 7, 1945, south of Kyushu, Japan. The morning sky is grey with mist and the smell of salt. Task Force 58 moves north through rough seas, 16 carriers. Their decks crowded with F6F Hellcats, F4U Corsairs, and Avengers, all poised for the largest naval air assault of the war. At 6:30, radar operators aboard the USS Bunker Hill pick up a massive contact, a Japanese surface fleet leaving the inland sea. At its heart sails the Yamato, the largest battleship ever built, with a suicide mission: reach Okinawa, beach herself, and fight to the death. The order comes through the fleet. All air groups, launch everything you have. The carriers erupt into motion. Hellcats thunder down the decks, climbing through the cloud bank into the dim dawn, each one loaded with machine guns and drop tanks, escorting bombers carrying torpedoes and 1.000-pound bombs. Lieutenant Jack Cross, now leading his own squadron, steadies his breath as he climbs through 10.000 feet. The sea below is alive with ships, hundreds of them, and somewhere out there. The Yamato waits. Keep tight, boys, he says over the radio. Let's finish this. The sky turns to fire. At 11 a.m., the strike group spots the enemy fleet, black smudges on the horizon. The Yamato steams at full speed, her anti-aircraft guns already firing into the sky. The Hellcats dive first, clearing the way. Flak explodes around them in thick black bursts, shaking the air. Cross banks hard left, tracers zipping past his canopy. Keep 'em busy, he yells, diving low over the battleship's deck. The ship's massive 18-inch guns swing upward, but the Hellcat is too fast. Behind him, Avengers drop torpedoes. A white line streaks across the water. Impact. A plume of fire and water erupts along the Yamato's flank. The Hellcats loop back, strafing destroyers and secondary guns, their .50 caliber rounds tearing through decks and fuel lines. From above, the ocean looks like it's boiling, flames, smoke, and fragments of ships scattered across miles of water. By 2 p.m., the great Yamato lists hard to port. Her magazine's cooking off. A mushroom of smoke rises as she explodes, breaking in two. Silence falls across the radio. Then, one voice, calm, almost reverent. The Yamato is gone. Another says quietly, the Empire has no more teeth. The kamikaze storm. But Japan does not surrender. Desperation breeds a new terror, the kamikaze. From late 1944 through mid-1945, swarms of suicide aircraft, old Zeros, Judies, and even trainers, dive on the American fleet. Their goal: die gloriously. Take a ship with them. For every kamikaze that breaks through, 10 more are cut down by Hellcats. The air becomes a slaughterhouse, tracer fire and smoke trails crisscrossing the sky. April 16, 1945, the USS Bunker Hill is attacked by 2 kamikazes in seconds. The explosions engulf the deck in flame, killing hundreds. Survivors recall the Hellcats still circling overhead, fighting off more attackers even as their own ship burns below. Every sortie now feels like Russian roulette, but the Hellcat pilots keep launching. On one mission over Okinawa, a Hellcat pilot named Ensign Harold Poon intercepts a diving kamikaze just 800 feet above a destroyer. He rams the Zero head-on, killing both pilots instantly, but the ship below is spared. The Hellcat had become more than a weapon, it was the guardian of every man who sailed beneath its shadow. The fall of the rising sun. By the summer of 1945, Japan's skies are empty. Factories lie in ruins, airfields are craters, and fuel is so scarce that pilots practice taxiing instead of flying. Hellcats roam the air unchallenged, strafing, bombing, patrolling. In July, squadrons from the USS Yorktown, USS Essex, and USS Shangri-La attack Tokyo Bay. They face almost no opposition. From his cockpit, Jack Cross watches the once mighty imperial capital burn beneath the clouds. He doesn't cheer. He only whispers, "It's over." August 15, 1945, the war ends. The Hellcats return to their carriers one last time. Flight decks are lined with pilots, weary, young, older than their years. Mechanics climb onto wings, laughing and crying at once. The Pacific, once ruled by the rising sun, now lies silent beneath the American flag. The reckoning. When the numbers are tallied, they hardly seem real. 12.275 Hellcats built. 305 Navy and Marine Corps aces made their names flying them. 5.156 enemy aircraft destroyed, more than any other Allied fighter. A kill ratio of 19-1. No other aircraft in aviation history matched its record. For every Hellcat lost in air combat, 19 enemy planes fell. It was the end of an era, the age of the dogfight, of propellers, of the men who fought inches apart in the sky. The Hellcat didn't just dominate the war, it defined it. Epilogue: The Cat Sleeps. San Diego Naval Air Station, 1946. Rows of F6F sit quietly in the California sun. Engines cold, paint fading, their wings are folded, their canopies covered in dust. A mechanic walks past, running his hand along the fuselage of one. He stops, reading the words stenciled under the canopy. Lieutenant CMDR. David McCampbell, Minzy 3. He smiles faintly. "You earned your rest, old girl." In the distance, jets begin to roar, the dawn of a new age. But for those who remember the Pacific skies, the name still carries weight. Hellcat. The fighter that shattered the rising sun, tamed the Pacific, and gave back the skies to those who had once feared to fly.